Welcome to the Learn True Health podcast. I'm your host, Ashley James. This is episode 54. Hello, True Health Seekers, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Learn True Health podcast. I am so excited to bring to you today's guest. I have over 60 interviews under my belt now because I have a lot more that I'm still yet to edit and get out there for you. So when I think about the last 60 plus interviews I've done, this particular interview, it comes to the top of my mind. Michael Weinberger has a special place in my heart after this interview, and I know he will for you too. He has an amazing formula for increasing happiness, especially with those who are suffering from depression, from bipolar disorder, from emotional mental issues. He can help people with emotional and mental issues, but also regular, everyday, average people. He can increase your happiness in your life using his app, and it's only a few minutes a day. And he shares of himself, his journey, having bipolar disorder for you to, and being suicidal and coming out the other end, and everything he's learned, he's poured into his app, which is called A Plan for Living. You can find it in the App Store for Android and for iPhones. I'm really excited for you to listen to the entire episode. But first, I have to tell you something. We just launched a Facebook group for our listeners, and all of our guests, including Michael Weinberger, are invited into the group to continue the conversation. So after listening to an episode, if you're so inspired as I have been with all the amazing guests, and you want to connect with one of the guests, they'll be in the group. You can ask them questions. I also ask them, the guests, the doctors and the pharmacists and the holistic health coaches and the personal trainers and the authors, everyone that we've been interviewing, I ask them to come into the group and share what they do, share their website, let them continue to share with you what they're up to. So it's a community where you can keep learning and keep growing. What's been great is we just started it less than a week ago, and already members, listeners are asking questions of each other, asking questions of me, really getting to know each other and learning from each other. So it's a fantastically supportive community, and I hope you come and join us. It's free for our listeners. It's a community for you, to support you. It's called Learn True Health. That's pretty easy to remember because that's the name of our podcast. So you can go to Facebook, just type in Learn True Health, 3 separate words, and you'll find us. You can also like our fan page while you're at it. While you're looking us up, you'll see the group come up and the fan page come up. And or you could go to learntruehealth.com/group, and that'll redirect you straight to the Facebook group. So I invite you to join us. And just I cannot say enough good things about our next guest. I have been so thrilled. I had some audio hiccups that I did my best to clean up, and that's why there's actually been a delay in getting this one out. I've been really wanting to get this episode out for a while, and I'm so happy that today's the day we're getting it out to you. So enjoy, sit back and enjoy. And if you know anyone who could really use a simple, quick 2-minute a day strategy to genuinely help them increase their happiness. Maybe you know someone who's suffering or sad or grieving or depressed, or someone who is going through a hard time, or someone who goes through emotional swings, or maybe you know someone who is on medication for mental or emotional issues that they're dealing with. This app helps people. So enjoy learning from Michael Weinberger, and I hope you download his app, A Plan for Living. Thank you so much. Enjoy. Well, I am so inspired by my next guest, Michael Weinberger. I am so thrilled that you're here on the show. You have something that we can all put on our cell phone today to improve our life. And getting to that, it's not just an average, any day diet and exercise app. This is something totally different, but it's going to transform our happiness level, and through that, our energy and our mental clarity and our emotional state. So I'm really excited for you to come on the show and share about you and about this app that we should all download on our smartphones.
Absolutely. Ashley, thank you so much for having me.
Terrific. Well, first, before we talk about what this app is, I'd love for you to share your story. Who are you, and what did you go through in your life to be able to come to this point where you've created this app that's helping so many people?
Absolutely. So my background, I like to tell everyone that, I am a husband, I am a father, I am an entrepreneur, I am a comedian, I am successful, and I am diagnosed with bipolar disorder. And, I am out there every day fighting the good fight, because I'm a firm believer that if you just show the world that, yes, I am one diagnosed, then it starts to break down the barriers associated with the stigma related to mental illness. And as a result of my diagnosis over 22 years ago, one of the many features of bipolar disorder is impulse control and mania. And so I also deal with addiction. And so that addiction can span anything. For me, it manifests itself worst in food. And so I attend 12-step meetings related to food addiction. And like I mentioned, it's back in 1994. I misdiagnosed with attention deficit disorder, which is a very common misdiagnosis, or at least it was 22 years ago. And just to clarify, I have bipolar disorder type 1. And so there's two types of bipolar disorder. One is predominantly manic. Type 2 is more of the depressive. And, when I tell stories and you get to hear of kind of the tirades and rants and humorous events that have taken over my life, people are like, man, you got the cool bipolar disorder. Right? Who doesn't want a cool illness that makes you manic and super excited and pumped up and, never sleeps and can grandiose thoughts and can take over the world, right? Many people are like, man, if I could just get a little bit of that, I'll take it. And I feel like what's probably not described well is that mania also rears its ugly head in irritability, rage, anger, and anger management problems. A story or a quick aside, if everyone can try and understand what I look at as bipolar disorder, let's imagine that we're watching a baseball game. And it's the bottom of the ninth, and your team is up, and it's a full count, 3 balls, 2 strikes, and the pitcher throws the pitch, and your batter hits a home run. And everyone can imagine jumping to their feet. The stands go wild. Your arms are in the air. You're screaming with excitement. And, your team just won, right? Can we all imagine that?
Mm-hmm.
And now imagine that everybody in the stadium sits down and myself, diagnosed with bipolar disorder, stays at that heightened level of energy for another 2 days.
Wow.
Like, that level of energy is exhausting. And now imagine the same thing happens, but your batter strikes out. And everyone sighs and then picks up and leaves the stadium. And I sigh and I sit in the depths of that depression for another 2 days. right? And so that was the best way I could describe bipolar disorder and kind of managing or dealing with the diagnosis that I have. To circle back, when I was originally diagnosed, they gave me stimulants, which is what they treat attention deficit disorder with.
Oh my gosh.
And so the last thing someone with mania requires is additional stimulation. And so, it's kind of like I was already fired up, and they're like, here's some gasoline, just chug it. I was like, okay. And so I struggled with the end of high school. They actually sent me home halfway through the day every day because I couldn't be contained. Not because I couldn't complete the schoolwork, but because the teachers couldn't handle me. And I then went on to college. I was finally properly diagnosed with bipolar disorder, and I didn't medicate properly for the first 15 years of my diagnosis.
Wow.
I spent 15 years self-medicating, being in denial, challenging my diagnosis, enjoying my diagnosis, I guess, if you could say it that way.
Mm-hmm.
Because, you're in college, you're 20, you're invincible anyway. Why not be invincible without a requirement of sleep?
Oh my gosh.
Right? And so now, you wake up at midnight and you go for a ride and you come back 4 days later, and it doesn't matter because you bounce back. And I ultimately ended up attending 4 universities. 2 of them asked me to leave and not return. One of them, I was the youngest teaching assistant in computer science the university had ever hired. I was also subsequently the youngest teaching assistant ever expelled from the university the subsequent semester. So when I look back on the ups and downs of my life, would I change it? Absolutely not. Was I able to have the foresight to build this app and create these tools when I needed them? Not at the time, but I was able to now come up with a tool that really helps me manage day to day. And a very simple question I have for people is, if you don't have a headache, you don't take Tylenol, right? If you don't have a symptom, you don't treat the symptom. Well, if you're not feeling manic and you're not feeling depressed, why treat mania or depression, right? And for me, that was a lot of the early thinking I had. Don't treat something that you don't have or sporadically have. And the problem with mental illness, as well as addiction, is if you're not planning and getting ahead of the situation, you don't catch up, right?
Right, because by the time you're depressed, you're not going to take the necessary steps to get out of it because you're depressed.
That's right. And, by the time you're manic, why would you listen to anyone that says, hey, listen, let me give you something that's going to make you a little lethargic and maybe a little foggy, but it's really in your best interest to take. I would not go back to that doctor, because I don't need a doctor when I'm feeling like that.
Right. You feel invincible.
Exactly. And so, over the course of my life, I've had tons of ups and downs. I've had manic decisions like leaving my job and finding a new one and getting paid, 3 to 4 times what I was earning. I then bought a house and quit 2 weeks later. I then started a company and lost all my money. I then moved to Michigan from New Jersey to start over without telling anyone. I then got married and gained 100+ pounds. I then I went to a doctor, and a quick story. I went to a doctor, and the doctor said, Michael, you're 26 years old, your liver's solid, the alcohol and moderate drug abuse that you've been putting your body through and weight gain is killing you. He said, you will be dead at 32.
Wow.
And I said, well, what do I need to do? And he says, lose 100 pounds. I'm like, okay. And so, Manic Michael clicked on, and I went and started attending 12-step meetings. And in 6 months, I lost 155 pounds.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Fortunately, you'll be able to congratulate me 3 times because, I just keep doing it. However, this year, my position on this year, it's the year of no more before pictures.
I like that.
I have so many before pictures that I want to strictly build after pictures.
I am with you. I am 100% with you on that one.
And I'll talk about my app in a little bit, but one of the components of my app deals with my food addiction and my impulses. And this year, without exercise, strictly following a nutritionist plan, I've lost 70 pounds in about 6 months.
Wow.
Just letting the universe take over. And I'll explain that more because it's far less abstract than that comment, but let me come back to that in a moment. The doctor says, so I lose the 155 pounds, and I come back to the doctor and I said, Doc, I've lost 155 pounds. What's next? And he just stares at me in disbelief, and he's like, I've treated thousands of patients. No one has ever come back when I just said lose 100 pounds. That's usually my way of saying don't come back, because you're not eligible for, some sort of surgery. I can't fix you naturally. And I went out and did it. And I came back and he said, listen, let's wait 2 or 3 years. You have a lot of excess skin. In 2 or 3 years, let's have surgery to clean up that skin. So I booked the surgery for 3 months from that day. And I had surgery 3 months later. And he operated on me, right? Because that's what surgeons do in this regard. And he cut out my skin, and I was the smallest I had been since high school. And I thought, I've now had this surgery. I've had these life-changing events. I'm not going to revert back to old behavior, right? Mania is not going to take over. Well, in fact, mania took over. I was unmedicated at the time. I ended up divorcing my wife and gaining almost 150 pounds back, and destroying my body again. And so this was all in 2006, 2007. In 2008, I met my wife, my current and final wife.
Yeah.
She's by far the greatest thing that could have ever happened to me. And again, not only is she the greatest thing that could have ever happened to me, I'm going to tell you how I use my app to improve my relationship with her on a regular basis.
Do tell.
But in 2009, on my birthday, April 13th, I was on the phone with a psychologist, and I decided to overdose. I just, life wasn't worth living. And when people look at my life, and it's a shame, I have such poor self-image and self-worth. I have had, I will say that. It's changed, right? But I've had such poor self-image that I couldn't possibly imagine people wanting my life. And I didn't want my life, and I overdosed, and my girlfriend at the time drove me to the hospital, and they kept me for 10 days. And for 2009, it took me 6 months to recover from that and get my meds stable. And since then, I've been on a stable medicine regime from 2009 until the present.
Congratulations.
And thank you. And, my wife is a significant part in that. A lot of people will talk about, do you enable them? Do you make them take their own meds? Do you put the pills in the pill box? My position is my wife has as vested an interest in my success and my treatment plan as I do. And so we work together to achieve that. I make sure I take the pills. She puts the pills in the box. And, on average, I take my pills every day. But a significant thing happened. I then had my first child in 2012, and it was life-changing. And it was life-changing not only for me becoming a parent, but for me becoming a parent with a mental illness, right? For me having to now kind of view this new challenge, and it kind of reinforced me being compliant, as well as kind of developing this tool further to make sure I kept moving forward, putting one foot in front of the other. I ultimately had a second child in 2014, and so I have a 4-year-old girl and a 2-year-old boy with my wife, and I've been married 5 years, and it's been the greatest 5 years of my life. And people always say, and my wife gets concerned, because I tell everyone we have a perfect marriage. And people immediately scoff. They're like, oh, I'm not going to listen to this guy. He's got a perfect marriage. Who wants to listen to the guy with the perfect marriage? Well, let me tell you what I mean. We argue the perfect amount. We hate each other the perfect amount, right? We genuinely want to be with one another the perfect amount, and we love and support our kids unconditionally the perfect amount. And we make enough mistakes to know that we are doing life perfectly. That's it, right? I am far from perfect. I actually learn from the mistakes, so I prefer to make as many of them as possible. But as we move forward, I've had several crises along the way, and I'll finish with this quick story, and then, if I may, I'll jump into the app.
Yeah, please do.
I want to talk about kind of self-advocacy, because I think that is a significant thing that we as individuals need to do.
Mm-hmm.
And in April of 2015, I was sent the wrong dose of medication.
Oh my gosh.
And I took it. And it was unfortunately under the right dose. But it was the same number of pills, right? So if I'm taking one pill of one medication and I get sent one pill of one medication, I was taking it. And it took from April until about July for me to really feel like things were out of sorts. And I spent July and August in outright suicidal ideation, suicidal thoughts. Like I didn't want to live. And I knew something was wrong. And so I went to my doctor, and we figured out that it was the wrong medication. It was the wrong dosage, and we got that fixed. And the insurance company I have said that the new medication I needed to take was going to be $2,000 a month. And unfortunately, I'm not part of society that has $2,000 a month laying around waiting for a pharmacy screw up. And my doctor's calling them and saying, I don't understand. This should be an approved medication. He needs this. This isn't optional. And they're not doing it for me. And so I finally call the CEO's office. And the woman who gets me on the phone says, who are you? I said, I'm Michael Weinberger. I'm calling for the CEO. And she says, does he know why you're calling? I said, well, he's about to find out. And she says, well, we have customer service for that. I said, well, let me just explain. Let me put it this way. I just need the address my attorneys should send correspondence to, because right now I'm going to kill myself and I need to direct my wife to the right person before I go. And there's absolute silence on the phone. And she puts me on hold, and I'll be right back. And the nicest woman in the world gets on the phone. And as far as I'm concerned, the organization as a whole should be ashamed of themselves. However, this woman verifies who I am and comes back to me and says, Michael, your medication is going to be $90 a month for the rest of your life. And I said, very politely, I said, I know. I said, what's a shame is if I didn't have the tenacity and personality and perseverance and commitment to my own well-being, where would I be today?
Dead.
Right. I said, what are you going to, how many of my friends and associates and those that I don't know, how many of them are getting pushed off by you and your organization's inability to get this right? Mm-hmm. Right. And so she said, if I may, I'd like to call you later today. I said, absolutely. And you know what? At 5:00 that night, she called just to see how I was feeling. And I thought that was impressive. And I said, you should teach your entire organization, which is a very large insurer, to do this, because there's people's lives that matter. And this is how I needed to get your attention. Mm-hmm. That being said, I got back on track, and I've recovered.
And you've learned this lesson, this very, very powerful lesson. Unfortunately, you had to suffer a few months, but this lesson you're now teaching others, the self-advocacy is absolutely critical to achieving optimal health, to achieving true health in every area. We have to self-advocate. I totally, you self-advocated by noticing something's wrong, by contacting your doctor, by investigating it, by then reaching out to that company up into the CEO. Like that is incredible. I know people who will go to their doctor and something's wrong. They won't question their doctor. They'll let their doctor give them the wrong medication. I have a friend, I'm just thinking of the last friend that told me, oh, well, my doctor told me I had to be on this medication before she'd let me go see a specialist. And that medication, even though she knew it was bad for her, she took it and it caused all sorts of negative side effects. And she knew she didn't need it. She knew she should have been directed to a specialist, but she didn't self-advocate. And it's so you're sharing this lesson. You're going to help so many people by letting them know. So as much as I'm not happy that you suffered and went through that, I am so happy that you gained the lesson and that you are actively teaching people this.
Absolutely. And that's, it comes down to, something I've learned, and it's a nice segue into the app that I've built, because one of the things I take away from the year while I struggled, and I literally have a text that says, if I didn't have children, I would kill myself tonight, is that bad feelings pass as quickly as good ones, right? And we just have to wait for things to pass sometimes to get to that next thought, that next moment in time. Because when I look back and I reflect on the year, I look at it this way. My company grew 30% last year.
Wow, nice.
I paid off all of my wife's student loans. Right.
Fantastic.
I built an app, found investors, and became an active blogger and active podcaster and writer on these topics, and a frequent speaker on these topics. And all of these things happened during last year's event. Right. Wow. And so, how does that happen, right? And so the way I can attribute it is, I've learned these techniques from very early on. And I could tell you it starts with this little story. I used to wake up as a kid and I'd be lying in my bed and my mother would come in and she'd say, Michael, I need you to get in the shower so we can go to school. And like a typical kid, I'd say, Ma, I don't feel well. Right? How many of us have done that? Lying in bed, Mom, I don't feel well. And my mother would say, okay, great. I'm sorry you don't feel well. Now get in the shower and get dressed and let's talk about it at the breakfast table. So unwittingly, I lost the first argument on the spot. And I started doing this, ultimate habitual behavior. And I'd go downstairs and I'd say, Mom, I really don't feel well. I don't think I can go to school. And she'd say, okay, great. We're going to go to school. And at the end of the day, you're going to come home. And if you still don't feel well, you're not going to play with your friends and you're going to lay down and take a nap. And I'm like, I don't understand. Like, it's like talking, it's like having a conversation with the happiest person in the world. And it was almost like my mother, she was a single mom, and I can go into the raising of me as a child, but that's probably for another day. But I could tell you that she either had to do it for herself as a single mom and having two boys. She had to do it for herself, and knowing that I had a diagnosis coming in the future, I don't know where it comes from. But she would always say, you don't get to decide how you feel from the comfort of your own bed. Well, I can tell you this, I never missed a day of school.
Wow.
Because it was automatic. And so now, last year in crisis, I would wake up and I would feel absolutely miserable. Like life, I can't imagine making it through the day, right? Mm-hmm. Today never existed. This funny banter between you and I never existed, right? This day was never possible last year. Mm-hmm. And I would just wake up and I'd get in the shower like a robot and I'd get dressed and I'd drive for breakfast because that's my habit. And I'd eat breakfast and I'd drive to my first appointment and I call my business partner and I'm hysterically crying. He says, Michael, he says, where are you going? I said, I got a sales call I got to go to. And he's like, why don't you just take the day off? Why don't you take a break? And I'm like, what am I going to do? Am I going to just wallow in what's going on? Let's just keep moving. At some point, something better is going to happen. And I'm driving. He's like, well, he starts laughing about it because he's dealt with me for 8 years now. And he says, well, what are you going to do when you get to the meeting? Are you going to go in there crying? And it was like that little banter. And my response was, if that's what's going to make him buy, I'm going to start crying. And it was just that conversation that wasn't going to happen if I isolated. That conversation wasn't going to happen if I never left my house, right? I was just basically wandering around in the universe, waiting to bump into the conversation I needed to have. Mm-hmm. And so the app that I built, I'll finally say it's called A Plan for Living, aplanforliving.com. And it starts with a very simple question that you ask yourself every day. How happy are you? And unlike other apps where they want you to rate your mood or give you these, adjectives to describe your mood or things of that nature, I simply want to know, scale of 1 to 10, how you doing? And every day I want you to ask yourself the same question until you become as ingrained and ritualized and habitualized into answering how you feel. Right? And the same way you have to advocate for yourself with your doctors, you have to be honest with yourself, right? It doesn't matter if your 2 is a my 2. It doesn't matter how you compare to people, right? This is when it matters, right? How do you feel? 1 means you're never getting out of bed. And 10 means you're probably trying to take over the world. And my belief is you're somewhere in between there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's somewhere in between there. And the sooner you could start answering that question, it kind of triggers your mind into saying, well, how happy am I? Well, let me think about that, right? It's not how do you feel, because that's too abstract. That's too, you could be negative and answer that. But how happy are you? That seems like even if I answer negatively with a 1, it's a positive because I answered the question. And I then have a very simple formula. It's called the happiness formula. I believe that gratitude plus spirituality plus mindfulness creates your own personal awareness. And awareness is what ultimately creates happiness. And so once you answer your simple question, how happy are you? You start filling out a gratitude list. And when I first started creating a gratitude list, we've learned that when you're grateful, you're able to get outside of yourself, right? When you're able to appreciate everything you have, then you're able to already start rewiring your brain, right? You're teaching yourself to find the positive. Mm-hmm. And by teaching yourself to find the positive, if you struggle with putting anything on the gratitude list, for me, the first thing I'd put on the gratitude list is, at least I'm creating a gratitude list. Right? You thought about it.
I'm grateful I'm creating a gratitude list.
Right. I'm grateful I answered the question. I'm grateful I downloaded an app that's not judging the fact that I don't want to enter a gratitude list. Right? Where else are you going to find a tool that is judgment-free, stigma-free, costs nothing if you so choose? It costs $2 a month if you're splurging. But it's just there for the taking, for you to say, what am I grateful for? And I start to realize that all of the things I'm grateful for. And one person that I worked with who's lost over 280 pounds, and we work together every day on improving ourselves through the app. He starts complaining about how terrible his weekend was, how terrible his Monday is. Right? And why is Monday terrible? Because society dictates it's terrible, right? You don't want to be the guy that shows up at work smiling on a Monday morning, because that is the antithesis of Monday. And so he's like, I can't. I have to put new headlights in my car because they keep burning out, and I'm frustrated with X, Y, and Z. And I said, well, let me ask you a question. Have you created a gratitude list yet? He's like, no. I'm like, why don't we do that? And he starts to tell me that his wife met his colleagues at a work party. The executives knew his name, right? His son didn't get yelled at. All of these things that he recalled. And I said, well, how do you feel now? He's like, not too bad. Right? Because he went from a 1 to a 4 because he just started to realize that things were going his way. And so the more grateful you are, the more it gets you outside of yourself. And the more you realize that you have, right? And you start to look around at those that don't have, and you could just appreciate your life. The second step is spirituality. And I've always struggled with what is the right word to use when discussing spirituality. And so I use the word prayer, but I want to just define spirituality. Spirituality is anything in the universe that you cannot explain, right? And so for people that have dieted, this is probably the best test to determine if you could be spiritual. Right? How often have you gotten in front of a scale after knowing you've eaten like garbage for the past couple days? And before you get on the scale, you close your eyes and hope that number's good. If you've ever done that, you are a spiritual being. You don't even realize it, because I don't care if you said God at that moment. I don't care what you called it, but you were like, man, I know this is not supposed to be good, but just make it good and I'll stop screwing up. Right? And so for those people that have never tried to lose weight, it works with bank accounts as well. How many of us have spent a weekend partying, and on Monday you go to get some money out of the ATM, and the ATM says, "Would you like a receipt with that?" And you're like, "Oh man, please don't let it be bad." Whoever that please is directed at, that's what I'm talking about in spiritual terms, right? And so from a spiritualist, it could be called a prayer, it could be called a wish, it could be called a hope, it could be called an intention. It's anything you don't have control over that you would like help with. So I use the word prayer because it makes sense to me logically. I'm going to pray for my friend who's getting divorced, right? I'm going to pray that I continue to follow my food plan. I'm going to pray to be patient today with my children, right? I'm going to pray that my wife is happy today. That to me is spirituality. It's things I can't necessarily control or affect, but things I'd love the universe to help me with.
It's focusing on what you want to have happen.
Exactly right. And now, if you look at this, you're at step 2, right? So first, how happy are you? Well, I'm okay. Now, what are you grateful for? Great. Now, what would you like to have happen in the world? And it's not just for you, it's for anyone, right? Because sharing your gratitude with people, or picking up a stranger's check, or doing something for somebody, that's spirituality, right? You're just helping out because it comes back to you. Mm-hmm. And so now you've created these 2 lists. I'll be honest with you, sometimes I go back to my gratitude list and I'm grateful I'm not going through some of the things my friends are going through, right? If you've ever needed to create a gratitude list, make a list of people you hope are doing okay. And a lot of those scenarios you're grateful you don't have to deal with. Mm-hmm. Right? That's the reality. And now, once you create these 2 lists, I ask you to ask yourself a simple question. How happy are you? You're likely a nudge happier, right? Even if it's only a little bit, you're probably smiling. You might have a little smirk, right? It's just something like, man, this is better than I thought. And now, the final piece of the formula is mindfulness. And this isn't something that happens at a moment in time. This is something that happens over the course of the day, right? And so while you're being mindful, this is how I define mindfulness. It's simply being present in the moment and being prepared to not be anywhere else, right? To be here. And so, how many of us have tried to have how many of us have tried to go through their emails and immediately started creating a to-do list on the side, or are talking to their spouses but thinking about what they have to do at work, right? I've had arguments with my wife in my head before I've gotten home. And only to get home and be so angry that I'm like, listen, I'm not talking about what's for dinner. And she's like, I don't even know what's for dinner. I'm like, well, I could swear we talked about this. No, you just argued with yourself again. How many of us have done that, right? That inner voice inside our head.
Yeah.
That inner voice is such a liar, right? Because they're going to go with the good, or they're going to go with the bad, or they're going to make something good bad, right? Because they your brain is driving that. And so for me, mindfulness doesn't require fancy outfits or dedicated rooms. I could be mindful at a traffic light, taking a deep breath for 10 seconds, right? Mindfulness for me happens everywhere. And so The app simply asks you, how are you feeling? What are you experiencing? Or what are you thinking about? And simply the act of being honest and recording those events throughout the day make you more aware, right? Now, the very simple formula, and it's kind of like if we reverse engineered at this point, awareness creates happiness, right? Being aware of everything you have creates happiness, right? That's your gratitude list. Being aware that you don't have to listen to the voices in your head creates happiness, because you're like, well, that's not really true. Well, that's mindfulness. Reaching out to the universe and having them help people that you can't help, or create a world that you want to be in, that's awareness. All of this is awareness, which ultimately creates happiness. And the reason I have my formula like this is making more money at work doesn't make you happy. Losing more weight doesn't make you happy, right? I could make less money and gain more weight, but be grateful and present and be happy. And so the void that I found when I was looking for tools to help myself, I spent an entire lifetime trying to make more money, right? As soon as I make X, I'll be happy. As soon as I make Y, I'll be happy. As soon as I go on this vacation, I'll be happy. As soon as I have kids, I'll be happy. As soon as I'm married, I'll be happy. As soon as I lose weight, I'll be happy. Well, I've had kids. I've gotten married multiple times. I've lost over 100 pounds multiple times. I found true happiness recently, because I've given up on believing that I can control everything around me, and I'm just grateful for what I have. And by doing that, I've managed to lose weight, right? People, and as I mentioned before, I take psych meds for my diagnosis, and I don't believe that medicinal solutions are the only solution, right? I believe it's a combination of medicinal and therapies and tools like a plan for living that help reinforce everything that's going on. Would I love to take less medication? Absolutely. Am I concerned about that today? No. Right? Because if I put a condition on my happiness, I won't be happy.
Right.
Because once that condition doesn't happen, or does happen, and I'm not happy, I've just proven that I now need to chase the next thing. Mm-hmm. And the reason why I say I can't put conditions on happiness is I then have in the app a section for goal setting. And I do goal setting a little differently than everyone else. I consider them to be micro goals. What am I going to do today to feel accomplished? Right? Am I going to respond to 10 emails? Because if so, that's my goal for today. Am I going to eat a healthy lunch? Because if so, that's my goal today. My goal is never lose 100 pounds. In losing 70 pounds this year, my goal every day is follow my food plan. Right? It's a tangible goal. And for my goals, I like people to assign goals as two types of goals: interested goals and committed goals. So if you're interested in completing something, if you don't get it done, it's okay. But if you're committed to doing something, you should do that before you go to sleep. And so by laying this out, it just helps reinforce you have to stop beating yourself up, because that's not helping you get anywhere.
Right. That's a biggie. That's a lot of people beat themselves up because those goals that we create, or those I should haves, we should ourselves. Right. We should all over ourselves. I should weigh less. I should have more money. I should, yada yada. I should be happier, whatever it is. And then, right. And then that's like you said, putting a condition on happiness, and that's a vicious cycle to break. But I love that you do micro goals, because all the goals set are these, like, I'm going to climb Mount Everest, and it's like, okay, well, what do you do then? It's like, okay, great. I set a goal. Now what? And it's just, it's so abstract that the little tiny steps towards it, the milestones towards achieving that goal, are lost. But when you're creating a daily goal, you get to celebrate little wins every day. And it is the baby steps that make up the bigger achievements, like you baby stepped every day following your food plan to losing 70 pounds. But if you set a giant goal, I'm going to lose 70 pounds. Okay, well then what?
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly right.
I love it. I love the concept of your app. I think it's wonderful.
I can relate it to the growth of my company, because I used to go into therapy sessions devastated that I didn't have the success of people that were 20 and 30 years older than me, right? I hadn't lived those 20 or 30 years, but I wanted the accomplishments of those 20 or 30 years. And I would focus on as soon as I have a company with 100 employees, then I'll be happy. As soon as my company makes whatever, then I'll be happy, right? And it goes back to those conditions. And a very skilled therapist said to me, he's like, Michael, he's like, you want to know how buildings are built? He's like, one brick at a time. Just put one brick down today and put another brick down tomorrow. And that advice was given to me 12 years ago. And today I have a 36-person company.
Wow.
That supports me and sustains me in a field I love. Right? And I was so focused on having the 36-person company that I was losing my mind every day for 2 years, wanting something that I was ultimately going to achieve. Right?
Mm-hmm.
It's so funny. It was like, how, I frequently ask people that I work with, how's that working out for you? Right? How's your goal of Mount Everest working out for you? Right now, it looks like you're just sitting here looking at the stairs to walk out of your house. How's that Mount Everest working out for you? And so when I stopped worrying about the big contracts, the next deal, and I just worried about what am I doing today, things started moving. Mm-hmm. The final piece of the app that I have in there, I put in a section of the app. It's called My Food Plan. And I'm now able to put my food plan in and record what I eat every day. And unlike MyFitnessPal or Weight Watchers or any of those other tools related to this, I don't care about the calories, right? It's not a menu to look up and find things. That's not what my tool's for. Mm-hmm. My tool's simply for you to become aware of what goes in your mouth, mm-hmm. right? Because so many people tell me, well, I have a diagnosis of mental illness and I take medication that prevents me from losing weight or causes me to gain weight. And my response to them, as someone that's lost over 100 pounds multiple times, the only 2 reasons I've gained weight or not lost weight was 1, from denial, or 2 was from a fork. I've never seen a pharmaceutical cause me to gain weight or not lose weight. A fork has been the culprit, right? Because I'll tell you something, and I do not believe I'm the anomaly. For 5 years, I was 350 pounds, and my blood pressure was creeping up, and things were getting out of control. And I'm a young guy. I'm 39 years old. And I was saying to myself, well, I take a lot of meds, so I'll probably be 350 pounds forever. And that's the voice, right? That goes back to mindfulness. Was I aware of the voice? No, I was just listening to the story. Well, it was probably the 3 desserts and 2 pizzas you had last week that might be affecting your weight loss, right? And I then said, I'm just going to follow what my nutritionist says. And I've lost, I think I'm between 60 and 70 pounds right now with the same 17 medications.
Wow.
This year I tore my hamstring, So I'm not exercising to lose weight, right? I'm taking 17 pills. I'm not exercising. I'm traveling through airports. I have 2 young children, right? And if anyone has 2 young children, they know I don't have any alone time, right? Going to the bathroom at my house is now a family event, right? We're not shy in our house. I mean, it's almost like I'm a dog. It's everyone come, take a look. Michael's in the bathroom. Let's all go see what he's doing. And so the final reason I created the app, another reason I created the app is this. It gives me this time to myself, right? I get to take 2 minutes that no one else has to record. How happy am I? What am I grateful for? What am I praying about? What am I mindful about? What's affecting me? And am I eating right? And when I get to do those things, I'm a healthier, happier, more engaged person, right? It doesn't mean yesterday we went as a family to the pool, right? The pool. The sole purpose of going to a pool is to swim. And my wife doesn't bring my son's swim diaper. And I get to drive home to go get my swim diaper with my son, who can't stop saying mama for 45 minutes. Right?
My son does the same thing, except he says dada.
Right. And so I'm not telling, don't download the app with the expectation that your kids aren't going to irritate you or your wife's going to remember everything. Right? Don't do that. Right? Don't download the application with expectations of losing weight immediately. Download the application because you're committed to being aware and because what you're trying hasn't worked. Mm-hmm. Right? And so I now have the app. It takes me 2 minutes to fill out in the morning. I use the food plan because now 5 times a day I'm forced to write down what I eat. And by putting down what I eat, I'm able to reassess how happy am I? How grateful am I? Am I really living in the moment? And so now I'm able to more actively engage in my life. And that to me is what recovery is about. That to me is what life is about. I'm now 290 pounds. And my blood pressure was 130/80. I don't have less bills, right? I don't have less arguments. They just don't mean as much to me anymore, right? I don't not have a diagnosis, right? I still have manic episodes and I still struggle and I still have to take deep breaths, but I'm now grateful for experiencing life the way I do. That is, again, a planforliving.com. The majority of everything described is available for free. The food plan and setting that up, that is $2 a month to use. However, I'm able to manage. It also has medication reminders because so many medication compliance is so important, whether it's holistic or pharmaceutical.
Sure.
Right? It doesn't matter. For the $2 a month, you're able to get a medication reminder, which says what time, how many, what is it, and what form is it come in. And it'll then send you email reminders to keep you on track. And so for me, just having that gentle reminder within the app say, have you taken your medication today? It's just another reinforcement for me. So that is kind of a pretty in-depth summary of a plan for living and kind of how I approach life.
I love it. How many downloads do you have?
So right now we have over 500 subscribers. We just showed up in the App Store about 30 days ago.
Wow. Congratulations.
Thank you. So prior to that, we were strictly a web app, and we decided to go into the App Store for the notifications piece. Having the gentle reminders on your phone works out better. I'm actively speaking around the country. I'm based in Michigan, but I'm out giving talks on mental illness and very similar to what we discussed today, but a lot more tips and tricks that I use to kind of manage my illness and interact with my family. And wellness. I'm also a very active blogger on Huffington Post and websites like The Mighty and Hey Freud and things like that.
Are links to all of that, if they go to aplanforliving.com, would they be able to find your blog posts?
Absolutely. All my blog posts are on A Plan for Living. On my resources page, you'll actually get a visual of me, and you could hear some of my open talks and other podcasts. They're on varying topics, so it's not always repetitive. It is the same story, so it's easy. It's just basically, I tell people, telling the truth is easy, because that way, no matter how frequently I'm interviewed, it's always the same.
I love what you're doing. I love your story. And of course, people who don't have a diagnosis of mental illness can benefit from your app, because it's the same principle: gratitude, spirituality, mindfulness, awareness, tracking your happiness. I mean, everyone can benefit from that.
That's exactly right. The way I look at it, and I don't know that the page is up on the website right now, but here's my position. Everyone has problems, right? The traditional modalities of treatment, right, which might be phone a friend, find a therapist, find a support group, find a 12-step program. Any one of those have their stigmas, right? They have cost, they have judgment, they have availability. The tool that I've kind of baked down is it's always available. It will never judge you. And at any moment, you can be as honest as you need to with it.
Now, can you go back in the past in the app and see, track your happiness a month ago, or I was just thinking that I know several doctors, naturopaths that I've interviewed, really recommend people do a food and mood journal if they if things aren't working for them. They've gone to doctors, and something isn't clicking, that people write down everything they eat and also track their mood. And this sounds like that would your app would fulfill that, because then they could see, oh wow, every time I ate chocolate cake, I was really, depressed and down the next day, and really low energy the next day. Maybe I should stop eating chocolate cake. Just, as an example. Or sometimes when we have allergies to certain foods, it actually can affect our energetic state and emotional state and mental state as well. So
that's right.
It sounds like we can use your app, aplanforliving.com, as a way of tracking a food and mood journal, which naturopaths really believe in, because then once you become aware, then you can start to see the patterns, and you can start to make those small changes to your diet and your lifestyle that will benefit you emotionally, mentally, spiritually, physically, the whole bit.
That's right. And that's exactly what it does. I've had users give me feedback that they notice that their happiness level, their reported happiness level, is higher the days they fill in more gratitudes than not.
There you go.
I've outright had users tell me that. And I've had users who had no diagnosis, who've had no issues, start using the app and say, they just became more aware and conscious of how they're feeling, right? It's not here to fix you. It's just here to keep you on track. But there are lots of graphs and reports that show gratitude relative to how mindful you are, how many spirituality items you have, how many gratitude things you have. Additionally, on the food plan, there's a share function. And so if you have a nutritionist or a naturopath or some doctor you're seeing, you could send your food plan and the food you ate against that plan via email to those doctors.
Oh, wow. Fantastic.
And so now, working in the 12-step world with Overeaters Anonymous, or working with nutritionists, many times they'll say, hey, just write down what you're eating and email it to me. And so now you could do that, track your mood, and get real-time feedback.
That is fantastic. I'm really excited for where your app is going. So has it only been available for the last 30 days? Or no, you said as an app. So how long has it on a web-based platform? How long has A Plan for Living been available for users?
So I've been marketing it for the past 5 or 6 months.
So it's still fairly new. I mean, as a business, and in total, how many people have been using it for several months?
So I have about 500 subscribers.
Are those the pro member, the $2 a month people?
They're at varying levels.
Oh, got it.
Because what happens is I have promotion levels and things like that. Those are 500 subscribers that are in the app on a daily basis.
Got it.
There's also a feature that's being built out that's partially there. It's called challenges. And one of the things you could do is you could challenge your friends to be 200% more grateful this week, right? And it's amazing because I do it with my wife. And here, actually, if I could take a quick aside to that.
Sure.
Let me explain to you how my marriage is doing better because of the app. Because this is more of I can't believe that this actually helps. But in your gratitudes and your spiritualities and your mindfulness and your goals, you are able to share those items via email, Twitter, and Facebook. Okay? So if I'm grateful for my conversation with Ashley today and I put it in my gratitude, I could send that to you as an email thanking you and just letting you know I feel good about it.
That's awesome.
Right? And so now I truly put that I'm, on my gratitude list, my amazing wife or my beautiful wife or, my committed wife or my healthy kids. And I then send those notes as emails to her. And I do it because, A, it makes me feel good. Okay. And I know that it's going to make her feel good. And she always responds positively. Now, if I come home every night and do it with the same frequency that I do through the app, I can assure you the response is, Michael, we're not doing that tonight. Okay? Because I can assure you this is typically the response when you tell your wife she's beautiful every day. No, I'm not. You always say that. Or what do you want? Or where are you going? Right? And I'm not saying, believe me, I have a very loving and supportive marriage. I'm just saying, if you're that happy in person, people could interpret it incorrectly.
Sure.
Well, my wife equally sends me gratitudes that she's thinking about me. And you know what? When I'm having a busy day and I'm engaged at work and I'm not thinking about my family or anything that I'm grateful for, and I all of a sudden get a notification that says an APFL gratitude has been shared with you, and my wife is thinking about me, that changes my day in a minute.
Sure.
Right? Yeah. And so one thing the app does is it gives a mindful nudge in the afternoon every day. Because every day you should take time to just slow down. If you don't do it throughout the day, just do it once. And you'll start to notice you feel better. So that's how it's working in my family and in my relationship. And it just allows us to have a better basis for conversation and more open communication with one another.
I love it. It's reminding me of one of my favorite movies of all time is called What the Bleep Do We Know? Have you seen it?
I have not.
It's old. I know. No one's seen it. It's so old. It's like back, I don't know, 10 years ago or more. So you got to check it out. It's probably on Netflix or Amazon. It's called What the Bleep Do We Know? But in it, it's sort of a documentary about the quantum physics, about how our emotions affect our physiology. And one of the scenes really dives into that when we are the opposite of grateful, when we are inside our own head and constantly like angry or depressed or fearful or constantly feeding one of those emotions,
Right.
over time our cells actually will develop receptors for those, because those emotional states create certain chemicals and certain like neurochemicals, and our cells create receptors for those chemicals, and then over time the cells actually will create less receptors for nutrition. So people who are opposite of grateful and in anger or sadness or fear, and they feed that for many years, they actually will age faster, and the body gets less and less nutrition. Whereas if we focus on gratitude, the body actually will be healthier and the cells will be healthier, and in the long term there's more receptors for nutrition. And so they just saw that there's this huge connection to physical health from even just doing what you're saying to do, to be grateful.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, if you take it, I believe, and it's shown, like you're saying, rewiring your brain is possible. Mm-hmm. Right. And so, when you look at Disney, even simplifying it with the movie, your brain has, these 5 basic emotions, and joy is only one of them. Mm-hmm. Right. And so we need to teach ourselves to route to joy when possible. Mm-hmm. Right. Because as we grow up, and this is actually something I've recently written a topic on, it deals with our wants and our needs. Right. Growing up, our parents or our caregivers take care of our needs. Right. Mm-hmm. So as children, all we do is focus on wants. Well, I don't know how your life has worked out, but I don't recall anyone sitting me down and saying, listen, you're an adult now. You're going to want to start focusing on your needs, And so we now become adults running around chasing our wants, assuming our needs will be taken care of.
Oh, ain't that the truth?
Right. And so now, through my app, through my own realizations, right? And lots of work in therapy. Don't get me wrong. I don't just use my app. I am in therapy. I do all these things. But I've come to the realization when I focus on my needs, right? Am I eating well? Am I sleeping enough? Am I doing these things? Everything I want somehow starts to arrive, right? Because I want more vacation. But when I'm on vacation, when I'm on the vacation I want, I don't value it because I'm thinking about going back to work.
Right.
Right? I'm thinking about how I'm going to pay for it. Now, when I focus on my needs, which is family time, well, how do you have quality family time? You go on vacation, right? When you go on vacation with said family and you're focused on the need of family, you turn your phone off because you're focusing on the need. Mm-hmm. It's almost like I never even realized it. But now that I focus on being attentive and present to my family, I work less, not because I'm wanting to work less, but because I'm wanting to be connected with my family and I'm happier. Mm-hmm. Now, as I mentioned, I'm making more money today than I was in the past. Mm-hmm. Not because I'm working harder, not because I'm focusing on wanting to make more money. I'm focusing on being healthier, on being happier, on being present. I'm focusing on my needs. All of a sudden, my wants are just taken care of.
I love it. And I love that your app helps people do that. Now, you had mentioned you have a business with over 30 employees. Is this a plan for living this business with your 30 employees, or do you do something else?
So I have a technology company where I build software for small businesses, and I do IT support. And so that's what my career has been. However, I started out doing some stand-up comedy 20 years ago, and I've learned that I enjoy telling stories and connecting with people, and I've learned that I need to manage my mental illness as well as my career. So I created a plan for living as a business because ultimately I see that that's where I'm headed, right? That's the path I'm taking.
I love it. I love it. And just a plug. What's the name of your business that makes? So is it you build apps for small businesses or your software for small businesses?
We do software and technology. It's proactive technology management. We're in Michigan. We have 4 locations in Michigan. We do corporate support for businesses, typically 50 PCs and under. It's the underserved IT market, and we provide software development, IT support, help desk, website design for those businesses.
Very cool. Excellent. Well, I'm so thrilled about A Plan for Living, and I want you to come back on the show to share more about it, in the future when you come out with new features or you have more to share about it. I definitely want you to come back on the show to promote those new features, because I really do believe in your app and that it is going to help transform so many lives as it has helped you. It increase the richness of your marriage and your health, and subsequently that's the ripple effect. It's spilling over to your family, your friends, your employees, your customers. So, and then of course the app users. So you are helping so many people. Before we sum it up today, I'd love for you to challenge our listeners, something that they could do now and for the next 7 days to improve their health.
So something I could challenge the users to do every day for the next 7 days. So at least once a day, sit down and pause and take a long breath in through your nose and out through your nose. And allow the oxygen to rush over your pituitary gland and feel your body immediately downregulate. And do it once, do it as many times a day as you can. It doesn't hurt. Your body will not forget to breathe. But do that, at some point, maybe when you're feeling amped up, and just feel your body down regulate. That is the thing I would recommend.
I love it. And of course, everyone should jump on their phones and go to aplanforliving.com. Or if they type in A Plan for Living in the App Store, in the Google Store, or the iTunes, they'll be able to find it.
You should be able to find it in both stores. I know that in the Apple Store, you could do A Plan for Living or Michael Weinberger. In the in the Play Store for Android, you might have to put quotes around A Plan for Living. They're still in the process of indexing us.
Great. Or just go to the website, aplanforliving.com, and there's links there.
That's right.
Excellent. Thank you so much for being on the show. I truly appreciate what you're doing, and I'm so inspired by your stories. Thank you so much for creating this app for us. My husband and I are gonna both download it, and we're both going to play with it. And when we have you on the show next to share about where A Plan for Living is going, I'll tell you and the listeners how it worked.
Absolutely, Ashley. Thank you so much.
Are you looking to optimize your health? Are you looking to get the best supplements at the lowest price? For high quality supplements and to talk to someone about what supplements are best for you, go to takeyoursupplements.com, and one of our fantastic True Health coaches will help you pick out the right supplements for you that are the highest quality and the best price. That's takeyoursupplements.com. takeyoursupplements.com. That's takeyoursupplements.com. Be sure to ask about free shipping and our awesome referral program.